welcome to the Windows AD talk. I gave this talk last year and it was like 2 hours long, which is why I split it up this year into like a GBM and a Red Team talk. So hopefully it's not going to be 2 hours long. I will say I tried to cut out slides and I cut out about half the slides and then I added some more, and somehow my slides this year are 83. I have 83 slides this year and I had 82 last year. So I don't know how long it's going to take. We'll see. I'm going to go quickly. I totally forgot. I've had this bag of like Sour Patch Kids sitting from the GBM. So I encourage you to ask questions, because if you ask a question, I'll give you one of these. Now Windows, here, let's go through this, right? This is my thing. 0 to hero only if you practice. Windows is hard. You will not be an expert after this talk, but this talk will give you everything you need to become an expert on your own. So you just got to listen. You got to try to understand. Do your best. Do practice later. You can use these slides as a reference. So don't worry if you're not going to remember anything, but just ask questions when you don't understand anything, okay? Because I promise you, Windows is kind of hard, and it confuses a lot of people, and it confuses me sometimes. So if you have a question, someone else definitely has it. So, you know, if you want, you could just say, can I have a Sour Patch Kids? And that'll count as a question, okay? Sure, you can have one. There you go. Okay. All right, so Microsoft documentation have too many TLAs, TMA. That means there's too many three-letter acronyms, too many acronyms. This is true. Every time I give this talk, people are like, what is ADCS? What is a TGT, a TGS, an ST, ADS? There's too many acronyms, and I will probably forget that some of you do not know what SCCM is. So if you don't know what it is, ask me, and I'll tell you, okay? Okay. Now, I'm going to preface this talk with my favorite tool ever. It's called NetExec. This is previously called CrackMap Exec. So on the right is this thing that I saw on LinkedIn, and someone was like hacking Active Directory methods, and they had a ton of techniques, and they had a ton of tools, and they mentioned Secrets Dump and SprayHound and PSExec and all these tools. Fun fact, every single one of those tools can be replaced with just one, and it's called NetExec. I'm one of the developers from NetExec. Very minor developer, but I put in a lot of effort into it, which helps. And pretty much everything in this talk you can do with these tools. If you want to install that, here's the commands you can run on Linux. The red stuff is for like just normal Debian and Ubuntu, and the blue stuff is for if you're in Kali Linux. NetExec is the tool that I want to talk about the most. Impacket is a library that NetExec is based on. And Impacket also has a ton of scripts that are used for Windows and AD pen testing. Here's the tool. There's a lot of protocols it supports. It supports MS SQL, NFS, what does that say? RDP, WMI, SSH, WinRM, VNC, LDAP, FTP, SMB. Way too many in my opinion. I only really use like 3 of them ever. But you know, it's good to know. It's good to have, yeah? SMB is like the main one. CrackMap Exec initially was only SMB, I'm pretty sure. It was based on a tool called SMB Exec. It was just SMB. LDAP is really useful. And WinRM is really useful. And that's kind of it. Some other things are useful sometimes, but not that much. So Impacket is a collection of Python classes for working with network protocols. Windows, what happened? Oh, do you want one of these? All right, there you go. So this is something that, so Windows code, it's all written in C, right? Well, a bunch of developers at this company called Fortran made this tool where they basically rewrote all of the Windows protocols in Python so that you don't have to call it locally, you can call it remotely from Python, which is really, really nice. And it's like, they claim it's for like just Windows usage, but not really. It's a pen testing company. They also make Cobalt Strike and some other tool, Core Impact, which is an automatic pen testing tool. This is really useful. If you want to make your own Windows tools, it's really good to learn how to use Impacket, which it's really confusing and there's absolutely zero documentation, but it's useful. Okay, I'm going to start with Recon. Before I do, does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay. So last year, because I gave this talk like combined with the intro to Windows, I gave it in like a structured order and not a very logical order. In that I was like, let's cover all the protocols and let's cover all the exploits. This year, because all of you learned a little bit about protocols and you learned a little bit about Windows and that kind of thing, I'm going to try to do it instead in the relative order in which I would do a pen test, right? So like, for example, I go to a pen testing competition. What do I start with? I start with reconnaissance. That makes sense? It's not going to be the exact order, but it's going to be close enough, okay? So, yeah?
Does the order vary per competition?
Yes. For Windows, it's generally, it's pretty straightforward. I think of it as like a line with like loops. So I do a little line, and then eventually I get credentials, and I loop back, and I do the things that I can do when I have credentials. And eventually I become an administrator, and then I loop back, and I go for another line that lets me do things as an administrator. And it's like, it's relatively sequential, but it'll vary a little bit. Okay. So netexec, one of the things you can do, so who's run an Nmap scan before? You done that before? Okay, perfect. That's so great. Nmap can take a long time, and it'll scan like all the ports, and it can be a little bit slow. And sometimes it's a little bit inaccurate. Now you should do an Nmap scan regardless, right? Here I'm passing in a subnet. This is the CPTC subnet, and I'm saying do these all these IP addresses in the subnet. And it's going to tell me all the Windows machines, and it's going to give me the domain names and that kind of thing. But something that's really nice is SMB will often report the operating system name. It'll report the domain name and the computer name. You can see, can you see my mouse? Yeah. Here you see the domain name. You can see the name of the computer. You can see whether or not SMB signing is enabled. You can see whether or not SMB version 1 is a thing. And this is really fantastic. It's really fast. You can scan 256 machines in like 10 seconds or something. So I really recommend this. Now, once you do this, you can add it to your Etsy host file, and you say, hey, IP address 10.10.0.100 is dc.sccmlab.local, right? That makes sense? Okay. Yes, Julian?
Will it also show if you have like non-Windows devices that are joined to a domain, or no?
Yeah. So in this case, I'm using the SMB protocol. So if SMB, now in Linux, SMB is called Samba, and it will also show you that. It'll show you if it's a Linux machine, as long as SMB is running. And there are other ways to use Active Directory to determine all the Linux machines on the network, but this is not one of them, unless SMB is running. That make sense? Okay. All right, so we've done the reconnaissance. Oh, man. Well, yeah, I guess I can use this. Okay, so who here has run Eternal Blue before? All right, perfect. Eternal Blue is one of those exploits that the NSA... Did they create it? Was it Shadow Brokers? Was it an NSA thing? I forget. But basically, it's an exploit that you can run with 0 credentials. So you can do a scan with netexec or with Nmap, and you can look for machines that are vulnerable to Eternal Blue. And with 0 credentials, you can just get administrator on any machine if they are vulnerable. I don't recommend this. It's very unstable, which means in a pen test, if you're pen testing a company that has tons and tons of people and tons of machines dependent on domain control, you do not want to run it. Because as pen testers, people already think we're evil, so you don't want to go break their systems, you know? So this is the kind of thing that you can detect and you put on a report, but preferably you do not run it, okay? But if you're doing like a hack the box lab, it's okay. You can do that. Nobody else is using that but you. I guess that's true. 0 logon is another vulnerability. It's slightly more recent. I think it's, from 2020. And this is a vulnerability in the net logon protocol that basically, so Max, you're good at crypto. They had an AES key with a hard-coded IV, and the IV was 0. So somebody discovered that, and they figured out that you can basically break the encryption on NetLogon, which is a logon protocol on Windows. You can change the password to whatever you want and log on to the domain controller. You have access to everything. Remember on the domain controller is the ntds.dit file, all the passwords of all the users, right? Now, also, you shouldn't run this unless you know what you're doing. And I'm saying that because in a pen test at CBTC Globals, I ran this, and I forgot to undo the exploit. And later, the competition people came in. CBTC is kind of like a role-playing competition, low-key, because you pretend like you're doing an actual pen test. They came in, and they were like, planes are being grounded, people are dying, there's like a heart transplant that's going to happen, but it can't get to the other state because you shut down the whole airport. Because I shut down the whole airport accidentally. So basically, if you reset the password, you have to put it back. right? But you know, just be wary of that. This is stuff that I didn't include last year. I didn't include the safety precautions, which was not good because we didn't do that well at globals, specifically because we were not being safe. So when all of you continue to do CPTC or whatever, just remember to be safe. Okay. All right. Let's talk about SMB. I love SMB. It's the best protocol. It's like the main one you have to use. When you get on a network, there's two different types of logon you should be trying if you don't have credentials. Sometimes in a pen test, they will give you credentials to start off because you can pretend that you are like an insider threat, right? Like Adam got hired for this company's evil, right? They'll give you the Adam credentials and you can do stuff. But sometimes you're not going to have credentials, especially in a box. And there's two types of logon you want to try. Anonymous logon, which is guest logon. That's when you have a username, any username, and no password. And this allows you to view shares and do this technique called a RID brute, which I'll talk about later, to view all the users. And null logon, which very rarely exists, but when it does is typically only on a domain controller, will allow you to view shares, users, groups, and password policy. Okay, I've only seen this like once in a lab, like null logon, but it does exist sometimes, although it's rare nowadays. Here's me using at the top anonymous logon. You can see that I'm using the username A. You can do whatever you want. I always do A because it's the shortest thing. And I do no password and I say shares, and NetExec will spit out all the shares and my permissions. It'll say I can read the IPC share. I can read and write the IT share. I can read the user share. Okay. Here's null logon. In this case, it's giving me a status access denied. I guess I'll talk about that later. Any questions? Yep.
What do you mean that A is the shortest thing?
That's just basically you want to type in a non-null user. So I pick a user that's one character because it's fast to type, and I go for A probably because my name is Adam. You can do whatever you want. I see a lot of people, they type in guest so they can be more explicit. So this is actually an old screenshot. Nowadays, NetExec will actually show you if it's guest logon. It'll print out guest, which is nice. That make sense? Okay, other questions? I'm already burning out my voice. Okay. Now, let's say you have access to a share, right? So here we have access to the IT share. We can read and write. This is a totally different lab, but in this case, I have a username and a password. So what I do is I use smbclient.py, which is part of the Impacket library, to log in with a username, a password, and an IP address. I can list all the shares. Here's the shares. And to use a share, I say use and the name of the share. And then I type ls, and I can do cat, and I can do get and put. And in this case, there's nothing in the share, right? But this is how you would do stuff with SMB client. Make sense, Andre?
Why would you do that when you have NetExec?
What do you mean?
Like previous way?
Yeah.
That's not exact.
So this is just printing out the things that exist.
Yeah.
NetExec can upload files and download files and list files, but I just prefer to use SMB client. It's a little bit nicer.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing you can do is password spraying. Now, before I talk about password spraying, I'm going to talk about the safety precautions so that nobody goes to global CPTC and shuts down the whole domain. Okay? So you can see there's this argument with NetExec called passpol, password policy. It'll tell me the complexity. Here it says password complexity flag 00000. That means nothing. I'm allowed to type in the wrong password as many times as I want. I can have as short of a password as I want, etc., etc. Actually, here it says minimum password length 5, maximum history length 24. That means it saves the last 24 passwords. Crazy, right? Yeah?
Hashes or passwords?
Hashes. Yeah, so not actually the passwords, it saves the hash passwords. But now that I see that there's no lockout policy, I can brute force as much as I want. So I got a password. Here I have a password called Heartsbane for a specific user. I might as well just try it for all the users, right? Maybe this person has 2 users. Maybe multiple users use the same password. When I was if you look at passwords of people in Gainesville, there's a lot of people that have a password Go Gators, or they have a password that's like Go Gainesville, Florida, Sunshine, whatever. You know, people love that. Yeah.
How do you know that a lot of people have this password?
You can find password dumps online, some of which have IP addresses, and you can download the data and correlate them. So you can look at the passwords that are common in regions. Like in Austin, I saw a lot of people that said, go Longhorns, UT Austin, like I love brisket, stuff like that. And you can come up with your own word lists based on things that are common in regions. Yep.
How common is it for password complexity to be like infinite tries?
I would say it's uncommon because it's one of those things that it's just so, I wouldn't know because I haven't really done any like actual pen tests, or I've done one actual pen test. I would say most companies are hopefully smart enough to do the simplest security configuration, which is password policy. But yeah, you can hear this is a tool that lets you make a custom word list for password cracking. So you can actually search through all of LDAP at UF, and you can see that things are called UF, UFL, students, skaters, and it'll automatically create a word list of all the common, based on like common words in the domain. Also, remember you can use local auth for an account. If you have a password that's doing domain logon, you can also try it on the local computer. Okay. By the way, if I tell you you can do this, what I'm saying is technically you can, but you shouldn't. Remember when I mentioned UF, don't do that. Don't do that on the UF network. Do it on your own lab. Do it on Hack the Bugs, try hack me, okay? Okay, good. Here's that technique I mentioned called RidBrute. You can see that I'm using anonymous logon, guest logon. And what this does is it says, hey, I know that relative identifiers typically start with 500 for like built-in users. And for users that are new, it starts at 1,000. So it just says, hey, what is RID 500? And it gets back to you and it says it's administrator. What is RID 1,000? Nothing. What is 1,008? It's the domain controller machine account. What is 1110? It's, et cetera. And you can see here there's an Atom user that's 1115. It just kind of brute forced. And it said, what is RID this? And if it responds, it knows what it is. Yes, Andre?
Can you explain how there's a 498? I thought they started at 500.
I thought so too, but I guess not. Yeah. So this is really useful. You can always do this if you have anonymous logon. I see a lot of people who are like expert pen testers who don't know this. And they're like, how do I figure out the usernames? This is how. Okay. This is no authentication when it actually works. Here I'm using 0 username, 0 password. I'm asking for the tac users, right? That's the user's argument. And it gives me a list of the usernames, the last time they changed their password, all the bad password count, and a description. You'll notice that here there's a password in the description. And the reason that happens sometimes is because administrators occasionally do not know that the description is public. They think it's just like an internal thing, but the description is public. So that's how I got this user, Samuel Tarley, password Heartsbane. Questions about that? Okay. Let's see what time it is. Oh my God, it's 6:30. I'm nowhere near done. Here's a fun little fact. SMB allows you to get code execution. How crazy is that? SMB is just a file share protocol. Why can we execute code? I don't know, because it's Windows. If you're a local administrator on a machine, you can execute commands using something called SMB exec. So here I am using the capital X argument on netexec, which is run as PowerShell, and it's printing out the PS version table, the PowerShell version. So if you ever have local admin, which by the way, if you have local admin, netexec will print out pwned. It'll say you've pwned this machine as this user. It'll do that for every protocol. But if it says pwned, that means you have code execution. Questions? Yes.
I guess what's the difference between a user that has pwned and one that doesn't? Does code execute?
For SMB,
Yeah.
it means local admin is pwned.
Okay.
On LDAP, domain admin is pwned.
Okay.
For WinRM, it's if you're in the PS remote group that it says pwned. Essentially, it will say pwned if there's something that allows you to execute commands.
Okay.
It depends on the protocol, but pwned means you got onto the machine. Okay. All right. There's another thing that I do at the beginning of a pen test that requires some background. There's a protocol called LLMNR that I didn't talk about. This stands for Link Local Multicast Name Resolution. You don't have to worry about what that is. It's basically DNS. Windows has this thing where if it's enabled on a network, which it is by default, if my computer says, hey, I'm looking for a file share called Atom, and it doesn't exist, I go and request to every other machine on the domain, do you know where Atom is? Do you know where the file share called Atom is? And any of them can respond with any IP address. and my computer just believes it. No verification, which means that you can just sit there and respond to every LLM&R request with your IP address. So anytime someone mistypes something, it'll make a request to your computer. Now, the reason that's rough is because every time you request with SMB, you send over a password hash to authenticate, which means that if I make a fake SMB server and I redirect everyone over to my SMB server, I can just collect hashes. So some pen testers tell me that they just leave this running for 24 hours and they get like 50 hashes, and they try to crack the hashes, and they get passwords, and they get onto the domain. Questions about this? Windows. See, Windows is nice and easy. It makes things, you make a typo, it'll try to figure it out for you. But it'll also do this. So it's enabled by default. You should disable it. Andre?
You actually need to crack the hash, but can you just use the hash to log in?
This is not an NTLM hash. This is a net NTLM hash, which does require cracking. In this case, you can see it's a V2 hash, which means it's not downgradable to an NTLM hash. Okay. Let's talk about relaying. So that was something that we call relaying, but technically relaying is when you capture a hash and forward it to another host to authenticate it with it. So you know, like a relay in a race where you have a little thing and you relay it over to someone? It's the same thing here. You grab a hash and you relay it over to another host and you try to authenticate as the person who authenticated to you. Now, sometimes you can capture hash by doing, so that was like getting people to browse to an SMB share or people doing a typo through LLM&R. Sometimes there are exploits that allow you to coerce off. So you can coerce someone by exploiting them into authenticating to you. You can also capture a hash by getting a database to request a file on your SMB share. You can do it by sending an email with an image in it, but the image points to your SMB share. So when someone opens the email, it tries to render the image and it requests the image from your SMB share and it tries to authenticate. You can do it by making a website request a file to your SMB share. So let's say you have a website that like will render files for you. Instead of typing in a local path, you can type in a URL and it'll make a request to you, the attacker, and send a hash. Does that make sense? Was that confusing? No, that makes sense? So there's a lot of ways that you can get hashes and you can try to crack them and get access to stuff. Now, if you want to do actual relaying, you have to do something, and NetExec will allow you to do this thing where they generate a relay list. So you know how I mentioned, like if you coerce authentication to you, you can send that hash over to someone else. SMB by default, well, on servers only, SMB signing is enabled. And SMB signing is this thing where it'll say, are you really who you say you are? So if SMB signing is disabled, you can relay authentication from another person over to you and just pretend you're that other person, and the server will not check if you're actually who you say you are. Does that make sense? So if I want to do that kind of exploit, one second, I would generate a relay list with NetExec, and this is just going to find every machine that has SMB signing disabled, and it'll tell me these are the machines that are vulnerable. These are the machines you can trick and lie to. Colin?
Requires the hash as well, so pass the hash or no?
This would be with a net NTLM hash.
Okay.
So it's not past the hash. This is a relay attack.
Got it.
Andre?
For the email thing,
Yeah.
does that require any user interaction, or does it like
No.
automatically do it? Okay.
It does. So you might have noticed that on Outlook for your school email, if it doesn't trust the email, it will not load the image. It'll be like, do you want to load this image? Has anyone realized that? This is one of the reasons why. Is because, now just one of the reasons, but this is one reason, is they don't want you to load a foreign image and send credentials over, or hashes over. Okay. So one of the cool things you can do is there's a module in NetExec called Slinky. So there's a link file in Windows that's basically a shortcut. And every link file has an image, like an image preview. If you can, for example, write to an SMB share, you can upload an LNK file that has an image that points to your malicious SMB server. So that way, anytime someone just opens a folder, it'll try to preview the image and it'll authenticate. Now this can be in other places than just an SMB share, but an SMB share is the most likely because you can write to that remotely. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Now let's talk about some coercion exploits. I'm gonna go through this quickly because they're kind of complicated and you don't really have to fully understand how they work. And also there's, we're a little bit behind. I probably should have known. There's a exploit called Petit Patam, which is I think from like 2021 or 2022, that allows you to coerce a Windows host to authenticate. So this isn't like a misconfiguration. This is an exploit, and it's an exploit in RPC. So you can run Petit Patam and coerce it to authenticate to wherever you want. There's also one called Shadow Coerce. It's very similar, except it's in the File Server Remote VSS protocol. Don't worry about that, what that means. But this only exists if this particular service, FS RVP, is enabled on the machine. There's also things to automatically coerce. As of like a week ago, NetExec has a module called Coerce Plus that lets you pass in an IP address, which is going to be your malicious IP address, and it'll just automatically go through all the machines and say DFS coerce, Petit Patam, printer bug, MS even. It'll just go through a bunch of coercion vulnerabilities. It'll try to exploit them. There's one that I like a little bit better, which is called Coercer, and this is one that'll go through every single RPC endpoint, and it's much more thorough, and it has just one more coercion bug, I believe. It'll do the same thing. It'll go through a ton of RPC endpoints, it'll go through a ton of hosts, and it'll try to coerce authentication over to your listener, which is going to be your malicious IP address. Are people getting confused now? No? I'm surprised. Good job. I'm proud of you. Any questions? Okay. Are people not asking questions because they just don't know what to ask? Yes?
Yeah, so what's coercer? So it's, what exactly is it trying to do?
What is Coercer?
Yeah, what is it actually?
Coercer, so I give it a list of hosts, and I give it a username and a password, which is not necessary, but usually you kind of have to have one. And I give it a listener. So what this is doing is it's looping through all the IP addresses in the host file, and it's trying to get those hosts to authenticate to me, which is the listener IP address. Does that make sense so far?
And it's doing this using like the image methods, or like different methods?
In this case, it's using vulnerabilities, exploits.
Okay.
So this thing was like a misconfiguration. You should not let a random person write to an SMB share, right? But this is going to be using exploits. That make sense?
Okay, so it's like automatic.
It's automatic.
That's how it does it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is very useful. It'll just go through everything. Sometimes I have no idea what it's doing, but it works. And I'm like, fantastic. It works. I got a hash. That's nice. Okay. Now, if you want to receive those hashes, you can use a tool called Responder. So here I am running Responder on my tunnel interface, which is my VPN interface. And every time someone authenticates to me, you see over here I got the hash. So here I got the hash for the King's Landing machine account, which, by the way, in Windows, all machine accounts end with a $sign. So that's how I know that this is a machine account, is it says King's Landing, $sign. And I see the hash here. So if I want, I can copy this over to a file. I can try to crack it and see if there's a password. I'll give you a hint, though. You will never crack a computer account machine hash, because those hashes are regenerated every month. They're, I think, 128 characters long, and some of the characters are not even human readable. So basically, you're never going to crack those hashes ever. But if it's like a user account, you probably can, or you maybe can, right? Yeah.
What is a machine account?
A machine account, so there's user accounts, right? Every computer, this computer, has a machine account, which is like an account that is used for connecting to the domain and doing things related to the system, right? I don't really fully know why there are machine accounts, to be honest, because they certainly could have gone another route, but yeah. Yes?
That's different from the system account, which deals with like services and things?
That's correct. This machine account is a domain account, whereas the system account is local.
Are machine accounts like log-inable, or are they just something that's on the computer?
Technically, you can log in. So the zero logon exploit lets you reset the machine account password. You can log in as a machine account, and then you become NT Authority system. Yes, you?
Are there ways to make sure your own hash is generated with non-readable characters? Like, why isn't that with user hashes? Does it make
So let's say you're a user and you want to log in. How do you type a non-readable character? You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay.
I think it's technically possible.
I know there's hotkeys because I did it by accident once.
Maybe.
So,
You.
So does that mean like machine accounts you're like technically like as like a normal person isn't supposed to like access them even if you're the owner of the computer?
That's correct. You should not be accessing them manually. Attackers will do it, and you can use that as a detection. But you will, like, machine accounts are logged into on a regular basis by other machine accounts. So sometimes it's hard to determine, Yeah, Andre?
What do you mean other machines are logged into my machine?
Like the domain controller?
Oh,
Yeah. Okay. I wonder how many slides I have left. Okay. So here's how you relay hashes. Here's how you do an actual relay attack. There's 3 steps. 1, you generate the relay list, and I'm calling it tf.text. This is the list of hosts with SMB signing disabled. SMB signing is disabled by default on workstations, like user accounts, but it's enabled by default on servers. So if you see a server with SMB signing disabled, that's rough. There are legitimate reasons to disable SMB signing because it makes things take longer, but it should be enabled. I think it is enabled by default on Windows 11 and Server 2025. The next thing you do is you set up your listener. This is a tool called NTLM Relay X, and I'm passing in my file of targets, and I'm also enabling SMB2, which you kind of have to do in a lot of in-packet tools. I don't know why, but you just do it. And this is a cool tool where anytime it receives a hash, it'll try to forward the hash over to the vulnerable machines, and it'll automatically dump all the passwords on the machine if it's successful. You can also make it automatically give you a shell. You can also make it automatically give you an LDAP shell, which is something that lets you modify LDAP properties. It can do a lot of stuff. By default, it just dumps passwords. So once you have your listener set up, you coerce authentication using netexec, using coercer, using whatever else. All right, make sense? Okay, so that's like, oh, and here's an example. I had to redact a lot of stuff because this is from an exam that I took. But here's me at the top. I have my listener. At the bottom, I ran the Petit Patam exploit, and you can see it dumped the hashes. It gave me administrator hash, and in this case, it's my local hashes, my SAM hashes. So these are my local account. And you remember, this is an NTLM hash, which means I can log in. I can pass the hash, and I can log in with just the hash without cracking the password. Questions? Yes.
the exam that you said was really easy.
I don't know. I'm not going to say which exam it is because I'm putting this recording on YouTube,
Okay.
and I don't want people to report me. But you know, I'm definitely allowed to post. I mean, I redacted it. I think it's fine. But anyway, it's from an exam I took. Yep.
What class is it for?
It was for a certification exam. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Andre?
Wait, is that actually redacted or did you just hello it?
Did I what?
Like, is it just hello it or is it actually?
Yeah, technically I probably should have blacked it out.
Yeah.
Fun fact, there are ways for you to undo pixelation. I kind of forgot about that, but it's okay. I trust nobody's going to do that. Okay. So let's say, hopefully you've gotten credentials by now. Here are the exploits that need credentials. Print Nightmare is this vulnerability, a set of vulnerabilities that existed in 2021 where someone reported it and it got patched and it got exploited again and it got patched and exploited again, and as a result we have Print Nightmare 1, 2, 3, 4, Hive Nightmare, Petit Patam. All of these are related. And Print Nightmare in particular is something that allows you to exploit an RPC endpoint for the printer driver to get remote code execution as an administrator, as long as you have some kind of credentials. That's all you have to know. So you can look up online yourself how to scan it. I'll give you a hint. NetExec will do it for you. Here's another vulnerability called NoPack. This is a vulnerability that exists in Kerberos that I'm not going to explain in full, but I do think this is, so a lot of exploits are like buffer overflows and crypto vulnerabilities. This is literally just a logic bug. Somebody put an if statement in the wrong place and allowed you to become domain admin with any user account. I really recommend you look up online how it works because I think it's really cool. If you want, I'll send you a talk from the guy who discovered it, a talk that I really like. Here's a list of some of the modules. This is actually outdated. As of now, there's probably like 30% more modules in NetExec, but you can see there's a NoPack module that will check if a domain controller is vulnerable, and you can download from here this tool called nopack.py that will allow you to impersonate whatever user you want. Okay, questions? Okay. All right, let's talk about LDAP. Let's say you've gone through all of SMB and you're like, I have no idea what to do. Here's what I would do with LDAP. Something you can do, remember that as long as you are a user, you can scan LDAP and you can look at all the attributes. Sometimes you can do it without a username. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting what's called the base naming contexts of a domain controller, which tells me that the domain name is snaplabs.local. Okay? It's DC equals snaplabs, DC equals local. That's all you have to worry about. And once I have that, I give it that base and I say DC snaplabs local. I give it a username and a password. I don't know why username is D and password is W, but it is. And it lists out a ton of stuff. Now, this is going to be really hard for you to read, and it used to confuse me so much. It's going to take some time for you to know what to skip and what to care about. But something you can do is you can use like frequency analysis, and you can look for strings that are uncommon. So this is a bash command that will sort by the frequency of a string, and it'll basically say what's uncommon, what's more unique, right? Because the unique stuff is probably what you care about. And this will give me like a list of users. Now, if you want to make it easier, there's also an in-packet tool called get80users, which will list all the users. And there's also something in NetExec that will get the description of every user. Remember I told you that sometimes admins will accidentally put a password in the description? Here's the password of the Aiden user. And it says, change password from default password. This is another thing that admins will do, is they'll give every new user the same password. And the users are supposed to change it, but sometimes they don't. So if you find a default password, you should try it for all the users, right? Assuming lockup policy is unique enough, is chill enough, lax enough. Now, something I will note, the point of password spraying is like typically the lockup policy is if you log in more than 3 times incorrectly, it locks you out, or it locks the user out, which is bad. 1 second. Password spraying is great because you only try 1 logon on every user. So every user has 1 out of 3 strikes. That's okay, you know? But if you lock out a user in an enterprise environment, like let's say you lock out the CEO, that's kind of rough because the CEO is going to go to his board meeting and is going to talk to the investors and be like, oh, I can't log in. So that's why you don't want to lock out users. Yeah, Colin?
Is one of them like IP locked, or like how does like locking?
No, it's like once a user has not logged in or has gotten the wrong password 3 times, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5, the user is no longer allowed to log in.
So there isn't a way to like lock from like a certain IP, like using the password policy?
It's not a password policy. You can prevent IP addresses from trying to log in. You can also prevent people from trying to log in at certain times or from certain devices, but that's not a thing.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Andre?
You just said prevent people from logging in from certain devices. How is that different from preventing them from logging in at certain IPs?
I mean, like, some people are not allowed to log in from a mobile device.
Oh.
You know?
Okay.
Sometimes two-factor authentication is required for a laptop, but not for a mobile device, which is a bad idea. Yes?
You said that if you would get like 3 like starts, you would not be able to log into it.
Mm-hmm.
But does that like I guess like 3 starts like reset like after a certain time period, or is it?
It depends on how they configured it. Sometimes it's like 24 hours. Sometimes it's never, you know. Sometimes you have to ask the admin, hey, I locked out, help me. And sometimes it'll reset after like 24 hours. It just depends on how it's been configured. Other questions? Oh, so many people have been asking me questions. Anyone want these? Nobody wants them? You want them? There we go. You can have one too. All right, hold on. I'm almost done, which I'm so relieved at, by the way. Oh, I'm sorry. I've been trying to get rid of these. More like I don't want them, and they're just kind of sitting in my room. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What's your question?
So wouldn't it raise a flag that a bunch of people logged in?
That's true. That's very true. And if you're a blue teamer, if you want to come to my blue team talk tomorrow, I'm going to talk about how to detect and defend against some of these attacks. Because some attacks are really easy when there's no logging, and some of them are so easy to detect, right? So you're right. That's one thing we do a frequency analysis. If the same user or the same IP address tries to log into every single account, or if we see 100 failed logins within 5 seconds, that's rough. And you know something's going on. Other questions? Okay. Okay, so that's our LDAP. Easy, nice and easy. How do we make it even easier? There's a tool called Bloodhound. Bloodhound is really, really cool. It will grab all the objects in Active Directory. It'll grab the users, the groups, the permissions, all this stuff, and it'll make a graph with nodes where two nodes are connected by an edge. It's a directed graph where one node can access another node if, in real life, that user or that object can access the other object. Does that make sense? So all the administrator people can access every user. So as a result, we have a node called admins, and we have a node called students, and admins can access students. That make sense? So if you scale this up, you can make a giant directed graph, and you can use graph theory to find the shortest path from one user to another. So let's say I exploit, and I get access to the Aiden user, but I want to become the domain admin because I'm a hacker and I want to own the whole network. I can put it into Bloodhound, and I can say, what is the shortest path from Aiden to admin? And it'll give it to me. Now, Bloodhound by default finds the shortest path in a unweighted graph. There are new tools that allow you to make it a weighted graph in order to say, hey, some exploits are easier than others. So sometimes a chain of 10 is easier than a chain of 3. And I'm not going to talk about that today, but it's something to note. Questions about that? Yes?
I'm kind of confused what you mean by path.
I'll show you. So here, I have a user called XYAN1D3. This is from a hack the box called Razor Black. And that user can log in to a machine called Haven DC. It's the domain controller. And that domain controller can do an exploit called a DC sync that allows me to grab the credentials of every single user, right? And once I have credentials of every single user, I can do whatever I want. So that's an exploit path where I first log into the machine and then I dump all the credentials. That makes sense? Andre?
Can edges have negative weights?
No, I don't think so.
That's outside the
I don't think there's negative effort in anything real life. Now, if you want to collect, by the way, fair warning, do not, I need all of you to promise, do not do this on the UF network or anywhere real unless they give you permission. Can people agree to that? People agree to that? I don't want to get in trouble.
Except for one person.
I don't want to get in trouble. Listen. If you know what you're doing, actually, don't do it. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Now, if you can do it on Hack the Box, it's really cool. I think it's very like the idea of graph theory in pen testing. If you're on a local machine, you can use a collector called SharpHound, which will collect all the stuff for a specific domain, and that's local. You can upload the data to Bloodhound, and it'll like do a bunch of analysis. And you can also do it remotely with this tool called Bloodhound.py. You pass in a user, a password, a domain, and you say collect all the info, and it'll collect all the info. And then you graph it. It'll give you a ton of cool graphs and cool exploit paths. Yeah, this is a really fantastic tool for finding vulnerabilities. And it can sometimes make exploitation very, very easy. Questions? Okay. There's some dangerous privileges. You'll notice that every edge has a privilege. Can PS remote, DC sync, contains. Now the contains privilege requires zero exploitation. If I'm in the admins group, I'm not exploiting anything. I just already have that privilege, which is why I said sometimes a path of 10 is easier than a path of 3. If you have a path of 10 that just says contains, I already have access to it. But if I have a path that requires me to exploit things, that might be harder. Andre?
Does each edge have a direction, or does the exploit go both ways?
It does have a direction. This is the old version of Bloodhound, where the graphing visualizer they're used is kind of dumb. You see, this is like an arrow. You see how this is like the tip of an arrow? Because it's smaller. This confused me when I was first using Bloodhound 2, but this is the start and this is the end.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's some dangerous privileges. Generic all means you have full rights to an object. Do whatever you want. You can change the password. You can add it to a group. You can make a machine account. By the way, on Windows, by default, you can make 10 machine accounts on the domain. And that's just normal. You can make 10 machine accounts. I'm assuming you can't do that on the UF domain, but I haven't checked. You can also generic write that'll allow you to add logon scripts. Who remembers me talking about logon scripts on Thursday? that you can add a script to a user that'll run whenever they log on. Scary. You know, put malware on that, whatever. You can change the owner, you can change access control lists, et cetera, et cetera. DC sync. So you can have multiple. Let me explain this. You can have multiple domain controllers on a network, and all the domain controllers should be synced up. But you know, whenever you do something, whenever you change something, it doesn't talk to every domain controller. Instead, what happens is every, I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours or something, all the domain controllers are going to attempt to sync up with each other so that they're the same. A fun, unintentional side effect of that is that if you change your password, you might be able to log in with your old password and your new password because two different domain controllers are going to have a different password in them. But sometimes you can do this thing where instead of, so how DC sync works is you say, hey, domain controller, give me all your info, including your ntds.dit file. If I, as a user, can DC sync, I can ask, hey, domain controller, give me all your info, including your ntds.dit file, and I can grab all the passwords. And that's why a DC sync is dangerous, because you can just grab all the credentials from the domain. Questions about that? Yes?
Are there no systems that like first they pass verification and then they'll give you the information first? Like
That
afterwards?
that is a thing. It's very, very, very rarely enabled.
If you already have the permission, then wouldn't you be authenticated or?
Permission to DC sync?
Yeah.
Well, you'd be on the domain, but you don't have everyone's password. So a DC sync would give you everybody's password,
Right.
including the admin.
So, but it's like if you have DC sync, it's like a valid thing that you could do in theory. It's not like an exploit.
Yes. I mean, it's like abusing a
Right.
misconfiguration,
Yeah. Okay.
right? But yeah. Okay. Man, I have 5 minutes left, and
All the Kerberos, let's go.
hey, 30 slides left. We can do it, right? Okay. So let's talk about some Kerberos vulnerabilities. I'm not going to talk about all the Kerberos attacks. If you're interested, you can look it up. There's two main Kerberos attacks. There's one called Kerberoasting. I'm going to go in reverse order. One called Kerberoasting and one called AS rep roasting. Now in Kerberos, you can request the hash of a service account for free. Anybody can do that. That is built-in basic functionality, and it is a feature, not a bug. So if there are service accounts that have what's called an SPN attached to them, a service principal name, you can just request the hash of the service account, and you can crack it. And a big problem with this is a lot of companies will make service accounts that are like domain admins, or they'll make service accounts where the account name is printer and the password is printer. That's rough. Your service accounts, because hashes can be requested so easily, should have really long passwords because nobody should be logging into them, ever. It does not have to be convenient. And that is something that you can do without even having credentials on the domain. AS rep roasting is similar, except it's with users rather than service accounts. There's a thing called pre-authentication. So I don't know if y'all remember. In Kerberos, there's a thing where you request the ticket granting ticket, and sometimes by default, it'll verify who you are by trying to decrypt your timestamp with your NT hash. Does anyone remember that? Yeah? Sometimes it won't verify who you are. And in that case, it'll just send a TGT to anyone. And that is a thing called AS rep roasting, where you are taking advantage of a bad AS response, authentication server response. So sometimes you can grab a user hash if pre-authentication is disabled, or you could grab a service account hash with Kerberoasting. Now these are both things that you can discover with NetExec. You can AS rep roast and you can Kerberoast. You can also use Impacket, or you can look in Bloodhound, and there's a query in Bloodhound that'll tell you all the Kerberoastable users and all the AS rep roastable users. Something I should note is that Kerberos only works if your clock is synced with a domain controller. So when you run an Nmap scan, Nmap will tell you, hey, there's a clock skew of 7 hours. You have to sync up your time with the domain controller, and you can do it with this command, ntp date and the IP address of the domain controller. NTP is a protocol called the Time Network Protocol, and you can do it that way. I'll give you a warning. Sometimes I do this, and I think it's like 7 p.m. because my clock is wrong, but then when I finish the pen test, it's actually 4 a.m. So, I don't know. I guess get your sleep. But you have to modify your time when you're doing Kerberos stuff. Yep.
Do you know why you have to modify your time?
Because Kerberos will, you remember I mentioned it'll verify timestamps and stuff.
Oh, right.
Realistically, they could fix that pretty easily by using, what is it, UTC time?
Yes.
But they don't do it, you know. Oh no.
Well, that's never going back on.
Oh, you have to do the keyboard?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I wish we knew that last time.
Yeah.
Last time the computer was on, but the other screen wouldn't turn on.
That one's still on.
Like it is now.
Part 2 next week.
Oh. All right, there we go. Okay. But yeah, you gotta do that. Here's an example from a lab I did where I tried to AS rep roast and it says no entries found. Here's a PowerShell command where I get the user of a username called AS rep roast me, and I make it so that do not require pre-auth is set to true. And now that pre-authentication is not allowed or not enabled, I can request the hash. How cool is that? Here's me doing the same thing with a service account. Or no, actually, this is me using NetExec, and this is me using Impacket using the get np users.py. Who wants to guess what get np users stands for?
Not phone.
What?
Not phone.
Non-print.
It's no pre-auth. But yeah, you can get the hash, you can crack it, do whatever you want. Here's the same thing with curb roasting. I try to curb roast, nothing happens. Here I'm using a command to set the SPN, add a service principal name, to a service called Kerberoast.me, and now I can use NetExec to Kerberoast, and it'll give me the hash of Kerberoast.me. I can use get user SPNs. Who knows what get user SPN stands for? Service principal name, good. And it'll give me the hash, and I can try to crack it. Okay? Questions about that? All right. We're almost done. We're so close. We're probably not going to do a lab today. For some reason, I thought this would take less than an hour. It's not going to happen. Anyone want my last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Sour Patch Kids? Yeah. You can have it. You can have it. Oh no, that's so. I'm so sorry. Who else wants one? You want one? You want one? What? Andre, and Aiden. All right. I'm out. I'm very sorry. I hope you still have incentive to ask questions. All right. Now we're going to talk about something called ADCS. This is Active Directory Certificate Services. Windows loves to make their own tooling for everything. So if you want to have your own private key infrastructure on the network, you can use ADCS. Now, ADCS is very interesting. A lot of people will use this, and they'll set up certificates and certificate templates that allow people to request access to a resource. Windows itself, Microsoft itself, put on a blog post online recommendations for how to set up ADCS because people were having trouble. So they said, this is really easy. Here's how to do it. If you followed Microsoft's instructions, you were vulnerable. And that just shows you how big of a company it is because even its own employees don't know what's going on. But this resulted in this white paper by this company SpectreOps where they published 8 different type of exploitations where if you followed Microsoft's advice, you were vulnerable to 8 different types of attacks that some would allow you to gain admin with no credentials at all. Some would allow you to gain admin with some credentials, and all of them were results of exploiting bad configurations. You can use a tool called Certify to find all the vulnerable and enabled certificates. And sometimes you can just say, hey, can I request a certificate for the admin user? And it'll go, yeah. And you can log in with that certificate. Here's an example template where you can see the enrollment permissions and you can see this PKI extended key usage. All you really have to care about is this enrollment permissions here for now. Let's see if there's anything interesting. Enrollment permissions. Oh, I guess this is a bad example, but sometimes they'll say you can enroll as domain admin, and the people who can enroll is anyone. And that is easy. It's true. Microsoft made it so easy for their clients, but they also made their clients very, very vulnerable. And this was a huge thing for pen testers for many years, and it still is kind of a problem. We're now up to ESC 15. Someone just released an exploit called EKUWU, which is ESC 15, and it's just another version of ADCS being exploitable. Not because of like vulnerabilities, but just misconfigurations. Questions? Yeah?
So these miscon like configs, why is it like Windows just uniquely vulnerable just the way that it's
Windows is just very complex. Very complex. It can also do a lot of stuff. Whatever you want, it can happen. Because Microsoft really wants to please its consumers and its customers. But it's not uniquely vulnerable. It's just so easy to mess up. And there's so many complexities because of how old it is, right? It's 20, 30 years old. And, you know, it's just a result of convenience. Here's the thing about security is convenience and security are inversely proportional, right? You can have someone have 10-factor authentication. That's really secure but really annoying and nobody wants it. Or you could have it so there's zero password at all. That's really convenient, but it's really vulnerable, right? Microsoft likes to be real nice to real nice to everyone. And it's so convenient, but as a result, it's vulnerable. They're getting better. They're adding more secure defaults, and they're trying hard to make it so that it's both secure and convenient, but you know, it's hard. Other questions? Okay, I'm so glad people are asking questions. This is great. All right. Oh, we're so close to finishing. Okay.
I said that like 4 times.
Have I? I think it's true now. We're so close to finishing this section of the presentation. All right. So I'm not going to cover exactly how this works, but there's this thing called SCCM. This is like the new hot thing for pen testers. It's the System Center Configuration Manager. This is something that IT admins can use to configure machines on a network. Hey, there's a new machine. I want to install all this stuff on it. Put it through SCCM. I want to update all the software on all my machines. Send it through SCCM. And there's a lot of vulnerabilities in this, but I'll tell you the easiest vulnerability is Windows had this thing where they would set up a machine, they'd set up a computer account for you, and they do it with a domain admin account. You know, you give it a laptop, and it'll log in with domain admin. It'll do all this stuff. There was a way for you to just grab the credentials as it logged in that it was using to log in. And those credentials were domain administrators. So you could just, hey, please update me. And then you get domain admin. You know, there's so many other things wrong with SCCM, and it's so complicated. And to be honest, I've forgotten a lot of the complexities because I haven't done it since last year at CPTC. But if you want to learn more about it, there's a website that I love that was made by a lot of really fantastic people who do Windows AD pen testing called thehacker.recipes. This is a great place to look. And this is a tool that will allow you to do SCCM exploitation. And I have a sticker on my water bottle of the tool. Okay, let's talk about web, right? So we've been through SMB, we've been through LDAP, we've been through Kerberos, ADCS, SCCM, nothing worked. What do? You go on a website. Usually, you're going to have some web server, right? Especially if it's a huge system. A lot of Windows by default is going to be running IIS. Now, this is very rare, but IIS can be very old, and there might be remote code execution, just as a result of the software being old. You can also sometimes write code to it. So sometimes there's misconfigurations where there's an FTP server or an SMB share that's writable by everyone, and it just so happens that a web server root is in that file directory. Well, you can just write websites, like web pages, onto there. And if the web page is using an executable language like PHP, ASP, or ASPX, you can just write code and then put it in the root of the website, browse to it, and it'll be executed. You can execute whatever you want. That makes sense? So this is a thing that you can do sometimes. Otherwise, you just have to try common exploits. You know, SQL injection, template injection, code injection, whatever it is. Sometimes you have to do SQL injection. right? You can use SQL injection to do things that I'm going to talk about later. Sometimes you can coerce authentication if there's local file inclusion. You can make it include a web page. And in this case, instead of including a file locally, you make it include your malicious SMB server so that you can grab a hash. Sometimes you can just inject commands. I don't know. Something I've seen in some labs is like a website will have a ton of names of people, and the person will be like, I love puppies, and my puppy's name is Ron, and my birth year is 1992. And then you try the password Ron1992 for that username, and it works. You know. And if you have a user called Adam Hassan, you can try the usernames Adam Hassan, A Hassan, AD Hassan, etc. Right? Because most companies, UF is not like this, but most places will have a set designated format for usernames. You can try that. Questions? We're not going to go that over time. Oh, thank you. Now let's say you have SQL. Right? Now, I mentioned sometimes you can coerce authentication. MS SQL has this really interesting thing where you can read files from the file system and read files from remote locations like your malicious SMB server. Sometimes you can also execute commands, if you are privileged enough, using something called XB Command Shell, which, by the way, is automated by the MS SQL client from Impacket. Sometimes there's also confidential info in the database. Sometimes you can find usernames, password hashes. You can crack the hashes, that kind of thing. Questions about that? Okay. Here's me using NetExec with the MS SQL protocol. I'm logging in. It tells me, hey, Samuel Tarley can access Castleback. So I use MS SQL client with the domain name, the user, the password, and I use Windows off. And it gives me access. It gives me a little thing where I can like run whatever I want. I can query the database. I can try to execute commands. It probably won't work unless you're an admin. I can try to coerce authentication. I forgot. Oh no, here's a module that I created for automatically coercing authentication using NetExec. It'll go through every single type of SQL command that can coerce auth, and it'll try to do it. So you can use that. Questions? Okay. This is going to be the shortest section, RDP. You can also use NetExec to figure out if you have access to RDP. Remember, that's Remote Desktop Protocol. You get the keyboard, the mouse, and the screen. You can use these tools X-Free RDP or RDesktop or Remina. All of them are good. All of them have their own benefits. I like RDesktop. If RDesktop doesn't work, I use X-Free RDP because it has better authentication, negotiation. Who knows what I mean when I say negotiation, authentication, negotiation? That makes sense because I didn't explain it. Windows by default will try to use the best type of authentication. So they'll typically start with Kerberos. And if I say I don't like Kerberos, it'll say, okay, can we do NetNTLM v2? And if I say I don't like that, it'll say, okay, can we use NetNTLM v1? Now typically, it will only allow Kerberos and NetNTLM v2. But on more permissive domains, it will allow you to get even worse and worse. And that's something that we call a negotiation. I'm negotiating what protocol I'm allowed to use for authentication, and X-Free RDP is good at doing that negotiation. Questions? Okay. WinRM. WinRM allows you to get PowerShell remotely. You can use NetExec to see if you can WinRM in, and if you can, it'll say pwned. And if it does, you can use this tool called Evil WinRM. You pass in an IP address, a username, a password, and it gives you access to PowerShell. WinRM is also nice because you can download and upload files, and you can log in with pass the hash, just like in Impacket and just like in NetExec. Questions about that? Okay. All right. Now it's the last section. The last section. Or the second last. I don't remember. Let's talk about post-exploitation, right? When you get onto a machine, hopefully by now you've gotten access to the machine. Hopefully. If you haven't, I really recommend just going back and trying it all again and just making sure you're doing absolutely everything. You can do password dumping. There's a fantastic tool called Mimikatz. You can also use, there's supposed to be a space here, but you can use Impacket's secretsdump.py, which will do things remotely. You can use NetExec to dump LSA secrets, which is like domain secrets, SAM, which is local secrets, NTDS, which is the domain controller secrets, and LAPS, which is like cloud secrets. You can do a lot of stuff with NetExec. It's great. But you can also use Mimikatz to get credentials. You just look up how to do that, right? Questions about that? Okay. Here's a great Try Hack Me. I really, really recommend this for post-exploitation. Sometimes when you get on a machine and you have low-level access, you want to do stuff to get more credentials, get higher privileges, that kind of thing. Now, I've already talked about domain privilege escalation. How do you get to domain admin? Are you tired, Andre?
You said that was the last section, so I'm just surprised.
I think this is the last section. All right. Now, if you want to locally escalate privileges, let's say you have access to a service account. I want to get access to the admin account, the local admin account. You can do something on Windows, which is whoami/priv. It'll show you all the privileges. Now, in this case, I'm domain admin, which means I have all the privileges, right? There's a lot of them. But there are some dangerous ones. Yes?
Does either one or M automatically like enable those privileges for you? 'Cause I
No.
think usually okay.
This is, I logged in as the domain admin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Andre?
Does it display privileges that are not enabled?
Uh,
Like, is it just listing all of the possible privileges? Or?
no, it's only showing the enabled ones. Now here's something that confused me.
Yeah.
Enabled does not mean you have the privilege. All these privileges are ones that you have. It does not show you privileges that you do not have. Now sometimes it'll say disabled, even though you have the privilege. And what this means is enabled means you have the privilege for that particular process. And disabled means you can get it, but it's not there for that particular process.
You mean the process that you ran the command in?
Yes. Now, the reason for that is there's different integrity levels in Windows. You have a higher integrity if you log in through through RDP, because you're interactive. But if you go to reverse shell, you're low integrity. Don't worry about that too much. But you're not going to have many privileges enabled. Yes, Colin?
I was on a physical machine and I did the whoami/priv, and I still got disabled.
That sometimes will be the case, but if it says disabled, don't worry about it. You still have it.
Okay.
Wait, what?
You still have the privilege. It's just not currently in use.
Okay.
There's like PowerShell scripts you can run to enable disabled privileges, right?
I don't know. I've never need to do any.
That sounds like
Just ignore this. Just ignore the state. Don't worry about it. All you have to worry about is the privilege name, and you can look it up. Right now, there's a few dangerous privileges. There's one called SE install always elevated that a lot of admins will enable because they hate people asking, "Hey, can you install this for me?" And this is something we'll always install things as an administrator. Which, if you boil that down, what it means is you can always run any code you want as administrator. So you can escalate privileges. There's one called SE debug privileges, which is used that a lot of developers have. This allows you to read and write process memory. So if there are secrets in memory, like hashes, you can dump the hashes. You can dump memory. You can even write to memory technically. And I guess I've never done this before, but I bet you could replace your security token to make it look like you're an administrator. I might be wrong about that. I'm just speculating. There's one called SE impersonate privilege. This is something that typically service accounts have because service accounts need to be able to impersonate other users. And this is one that'll give you like automatic admin. And you can often exploit this with something called a potato attack, which I'll talk about later. And there's also SE backup privilege and restore privilege, which allows you to read and write any file you want. If you're on a domain controller and you have SE backup privilege, you can just read the ntds.dit file. And you can dump all the hashes. Andre?
So, SE impersonate, it says client. Is that same thing as user?
Yes. Other questions? Okay. This is a great blog post. Yeah, it's a good blog post to look at. It has some of the dangerous privileges. Let's talk about potato attacks. I'm not going to fully explain it. I only learned today why it's called a potato attack. But a potato attack is just any attack where you can basically trick a process to run as an administrator and give you access to it. So some processes on Windows are always running as admin. Sometimes you can trick them into doing things for you. And the reason it's called a potato attack is because the first one was called Rotten Potato because the creator said this is such a dirty exploit. It's such a rotten exploit. So he called it Rotten Potato, and then everyone after that called it a potato attack. So there's Hot Potato, Rotten Potato, Lonely Potato, Juicy Potato. I really like Juicy Potato and God Potato. Those are the best ones.
Is there a saved potato?
What?
Is there a saved potato?
I don't know. You can make one. All right. So, yeah, the reason that service accounts have SE impersonate privilege is because let's say you're a file system and a user logs into the file system. You expect it to show you your files, right? The only way it can do that is by essentially impersonating you and logging in as you. So service accounts are very often very highly privileged, and they can impersonate any user they want. So if you log in and you see SE impersonate privilege, you can run God Potato, and it'll give you administrator. Questions about that, Andre?
So what's the commonality between all the potatoes? Is it SE impersonate?
No. Well, all service accounts will typically have SE impersonate privilege, although that's becoming less and less true over time as things are being hardened and secured. But typically, if you see SE impersonate privilege, then you can use a potato attack. But all of them are just things that allow you to impersonate a user and do something with it, right? So you can impersonate the administrator process and get that process to run whatever you want. And that's a drastic oversimplification, and it's barely accurate, but you can read more into it right here if you want. Okay? Other questions? All right. There's another vulnerability that allows for privilege escalation on Windows called unquoted service path. Windows will do this thing where if you don't have quotes around a space, it'll try to guess where the where the path is supposed to be. So in this case, you can see that my path is program files, A subfolder, B subfolder, C subfolder. Windows has what they call a search path, where if there's no quotes, they don't know what the real path is. So they first try C:/program.exe. And if it exists, they execute it. If it doesn't exist, they try program files A.exe right before the space. If it exists, they execute it. So if you have an unquoted service path where you can write to program files, make A.exe. And when the service runs, it's going to find A.exe before it finds this whole thing, and it's going to run that as whatever privilege. In this case, it's running as local system, and it's set to auto start, which means I think, if I remember correctly, it'll start on boot. So you just put your malicious program there, you put your payload, your sliver payload or whatever, and it'll execute as admin. Questions? Yes, Andre?
Is it handled that way because there's no other way to parse an input with spaces in it?
There's no way.
Yeah, so Linux just refuses. You have to have quotes if there's spaces,
Okay.
or you have to escape the spaces. But Windows tries to be nice. It says, you forgot the quotes, that's okay.
This
I'll
makes
figure it out for
no
you.
Goddamn sense though.
No?
In what world would I want to stop at the space and make double quotes?
No,
I don't know.
it's like you run a command and then you have the like parameters afterwards. Is
That might be it.
That is probably
What's your name again?
Buying.
What is it?
Buying.
Bine? Yeah, what's your question?
I was just gonna ask, like, as a user, could I just go on my file explorer and find these files if they did exist on my computer, or would it be like typical to like?
So this is a service that runs a program, and this output, I'm using SCQC to query the service, but there's a tool called PowerUp. The new version is called SharpUp, and SharpUp will automatically look for unquoted service paths. There's also a tool called WinPeas and one called Seatbelt that will do the same thing and more. They'll look for even more privilege escalation vulnerabilities. Other questions? Okay. Oh my God, I'm done. We're done.
Really?
I know. Other questions that people have? Yes, Andre?
I guess for the previous thing, is it possible for some services, like based on privileges, how do I explain this? Like, can we go back to the slide? It's easier to show it.
Which slide?
The one we just talked about.
This one?
Yeah. Like, can you have it so that some services are able to access program.exe, but permissions prevent, like, generally you can't see it? Like,
I don't know what you're asking.
for a general user, usually they wouldn't be able to see it because of permission restrictions, but if you run as an heavily elevated user, then it does see that, like, program.exe and executes it in an effort to, like, try and hide these.
I'm not following.
Okay.
Let's talk about it later, okay? Other questions? All right. Well, I hope all of you become Windows experts. I'm graduating soon, and UFSIT needs one. And I promise, if you are the only person that knows Windows, you will get into every competition. This knowledge was very useful for me during CPTC and during Cyberforce, and it will be for all of you as well. So learn Windows, ask questions. I will say here's some fantastic resources. This is like from top to bottom the order in which I would do them. I have a TCM security course that's entirely free. I have the NetExec Wiki. I have a Try Hack Me room, which I really recommend all of you try because I promise that if you use these slides as a reference, you can do it in like an hour or two. Game of Active Directory is a vulnerable network that you can deploy on your own. It has like 15 machines or something, and you can put it on AWS, and it costs like 3 cents per hour. The Hacker Recipes is a great website with a ton of resources, and VulnLab is a version of Hack the Box that is harder and has a lot of really cool Active Directory stuff on it. All right. You can talk to me after if you have other questions.